Okay, here's the next part, guys. We let this stuff sit overnight. I just took my clamps off, and we have our perfectly flat bundles. So next is going to be a pain in the ass. We're going to have to sew each individual bundle. The way to do this, it's called a saddle stitch. For those of you who have never sewn before, I'll show you how it's done, and I'll also show you a modified version of how I tie mine off. I like to use an off-white, a little bit thicker thread. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's a cord that I get usually when I bind books. Let's see here. I don't know if it says cotton braiding cord. I mean, you can use any type of thicker, cord. Just don't use regular sewing thread. It's too delicate. So get an off-white color and a larger needle. I use a little bit bigger needle than the average one, just because this cord is thicker and it's easier to thread this way. I marked the packet so you guys can see the pattern. What I like to do, some guys who stitch their own books start from the middle of the inside. I like to start on the outside to keep all the knots from being in the way. And this is basically the pattern we're going to do. I didn't mark the inside because I've done this 1,000 times and I don't like ink marks, but what I would suggest, if you guys have paper clips or those like black spring clips, is to clip both corners while you do this to keep the paper from moving. I don't have them, and like I said, I've done this so many times. I'm just going to freehand it right now. I also get myself something with a small opening, and the reason is when you puncture your needle through the paper, sometimes you need to apply pressure, and it's much easier to have it resting on top of something to give it support. We're going to do single thread. So basically with your cord, you're going to just tie a knot on one end. The other end, maybe 2 or 3 inches through the needle, and that's it. When you pull it through, just make sure you don't pull on one end and yank the cord out. So again, keep yourself straight, clip it all off. I'm going to start, and you always start from the dead center, which is going to be this hole. I'm trying to do this with the camera propped on something and stay in focus for you, so I'll go through this. And that's it. We're going to push the first one through. And don't worry about if you get a little crease or anything like that, or some, a little bend, like, that immediately goes away. But it actually adds a little bit of character to your pages, being that this diary is, quite a number of years old. So again, I might not hit my mark. I'm just, like I said, freehanding this right now. So the first one goes through the center. Maybe an inch or inch and a half, because you got to remember, this page is not that big. All right, so I missed it by a tiny bit, as you see. Okay, so again, that's what it will look like from the inside, a loop. Now, follow your pattern. Again, when you have yours clipped off, like I told you, you'll be able to not have to hold on to the, keep it straight so much. But I'm just doing it for the video. I didn't have those clips, nor did I feel like going to find them. Okay, so here on the outside so far, you got one loop inside. Now, when you get to the end, this is our last hole. The next stitch, we're going back through the same hole from the stitch previously. So what you want to try to make sure you don't stick your needle through the thread. There's enough room on the side to just get it to go right in without catching the other piece of thread. Okay, so now you got that. This part, when you get back to the center part with the knot, what I do is I just grab this little tail and pull the knot to the side so my needle can go right through without catching anything previous. Sometimes it helps if when you stick it in, if you need it to, some leverage, you can actually fold the book shut or whatever you need to do to pull your thread or needle through. But again, don't worry about anything as far as any of the little wrinkles and creases, because you don't see that. And like I said, and the ones that maybe you do a little too hard and you do see, actually add some character to the book, because you got to remember the first entries are in the 1890s in this, so it is, it should have been used a lot over the years by Indiana Jones. So we're gonna go here. After I do this stitch, I'll show you guys what it looks like. So you see the inside so far, those three, in the reverse. Okay, we're gonna go through the last one now. And you can figure out whatever easiest way it is for you to do. You might not use this. You might want to use a lid to something or something else. Whatever you got, whatever works for you, do it. Now, this is going to be the final stitch inside. Once we go past this one, as you see, the stitching is done in here, but we still technically have one more to do. Other people, like I said, would have started from the inside and left the knot on the inside, which I can't stand because it always seems to be in the way and it just doesn't look right. So I always do my knots from the outside, and it gets hidden with the binding. But this is the other reason. This final stitch, instead of going back through here like supposed to, I use this as the end stitch. So I put my needle underneath this thread, come back around. We're going to make a knot basically. So I'm going to come back around, grab it from here, keeping the tail of the previous thread, and then I'm just going to slowly pull this and make a knot onto it. All these knots you don't have to worry about because they disappear when we do the binding. So I trim mine down. Some people like to leave, an inch and whatnot. You don't have to. All this is going to disappear, and that's it. So now what you got is that's a saddle stitch. So each packet is going to be sewn like that, and then at the end we're going to stack these all together and then do the glue. That'll be the next step. But for now, get all your packets sewn and we'll get to gluing next. Okay guys, now that you got everything stitched, what I did is I took all the pages and put them back in a little bundle here using some clamps. If you don't have clamps, you can use anything. Lay them on the edge of a book with another book on top of them. Anything that you can do to sandwich your bundles together. And I use a piece of cloth or any kind of material. I cut it about, I don't know, 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch wider than the actual bundle pages are going to be, so we can wrap it around. After this, we glue the binding of this. So I got everything in here now, and I use just a throwaway paintbrush and begin gluing, painting on the glue. As far as glue, you always want to use something that has a PVA, polyvinyl acetate, or whatever it's called, which basically means it's a flexible, permanent flexible glue. And believe it or not, Elmer's wood glue, any type of wood glue, is primarily a PVA based glue. So that's probably the best thing to use, is a wood glue. What I'm gonna do here is, why I use a brush is because I can be real delicate here. I don't want to glue the pages to the wood boards that I'm using to, hold everything together. We're gonna give this probably about 5 coats, so you don't have to go too nuts the first coat here. What I try to concentrate on is just making sure I got a little bit on every piece of the paper. But it doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be, this massive, thick binding, because we're going to do it several times. So, like I said, first one, just concentrate on getting a little bit on every piece of paper, and then we'll stick the cloth on. Okay, now that you got probably, I put 5 coats on, I'm going to take the material, and I marked it, kind of give me an idea of where I want it to be, so I have the same overhangs on each side. I cut this piece of material the same height. I think it was 6 1/4, and I think it's just about 3 inches wide, so you can pre-cut yours. I have to just do a little folding here to get it underneath this clamp here. Once you got it there, we're gonna set it into the final layer of glue here. So the last coat of glue, you're gonna do this part of it while it's still wet, working this all in. And as I'm sure you guys know, this is gonna be the backbone of the book here. So once this dries, we'll take these clamps off, and then the overhangs here, we're going to glue those around, and it'll make the binding of this book very strong. Okay, so that's done. We're going to let this dry. Then off to the next step.